Hi folks, my name is Tom Devine. I'm the legal director of the Government Accountability Project. GAP is a whistleblower support organization. So we're lawyers, so I guess better define the terms. People that we help are citizens who use free speech rights to challenge abuses of power that betray the public trust. That's the folks that we serve. We help them in 4 ways: defending them against retaliation, helping them to make a difference, and stronger free speech laws to protect them, and sharing our lessons learned. Over the last 45 years, I've been honored to help 8,000 whistleblowers. Many changed the course of history. But I can't think of any greater honor than introducing Scott today. Scott Smith, I don't even really think of him as a human being. I think of him as a phenomenon for the truth. Scott, go for it.
Thank you, Don. I'd like to start by thanking Leslie Pacey, who reached out to me from Government Accountability Project in the support of their legal team. I probably wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for them. I'd also like to thank my scientific team. Now, I am the chosen one on the front lines to take all the full frontal assault from the EPA, the railroad, and the smear and attacks, and even some of the residents from the community that want to play both sides, which is not in the best interest of East Palestine. And to address that, the scientists on my team actually worked for Battelle, and they wrote some of the ASTM dioxin standards. I can't reveal their names, but I will say one name. On March 29th, I got a phone call from Don and said, dioxins are the real issue. I want to support you. And I want to tell you about the great team around me. I don't make a statement. I don't do a PowerPoint without them saying it. Don is battling cancer. But I believe in giving credit where credit is due, even if I'm going to get in trouble. I won't use his last name. He calls me nonstop. His passion. I wouldn't be able to do this without him. He literally calls me from having chemotherapy. But, and this team around me is phenomenal. I have an expression: you leave your ego at the door. That would serve a lot of other people well. If you leave your ego at the door, it's just a great, great thing. Also want to, with everything going on, there's a lot of great nonprofits, net tax exempt organizations, but I also want to say that I want to challenge today some of these nonprofits to fund testing. I've done all I can do. I'm trying to do it. And all these plaintiffs' attorneys, there's one attorney, Bill DeBroff, who reached out to me. I want to thank him. He's actually funding resident test results. And if your attorney is not giving you your results or being transparent or helping you test, my suggestion is you need to start asking questions. So with that being said, how do you turn off the middle thing?
We're just trying something. We're good.
Oh. Why am I here still today? And since I get constantly accused of making things up and lying, so my mother is still alive. It was her birthday yesterday, in fact. So if anybody wants to check out this story, you can. But why am I here? Some people are just born this way. I don't remember this, but I was 4 years old, and that's me. And I was a ring bearer in the wedding, and they were worried about me losing the ring. And I refused to be in the wedding because they didn't trust me, I'm told, unless they gave me the real ring. So they gave me the real ring. So the point is, I was born stubborn. It cost me a lot of money. I planned to come here twice. Now it's 22 trips and 26 rounds of testing. So be it. I will not stop. So a week ago on Friday, I remember the time. It was 5:40 p.m. and I had received an email from Leslie Pacey, who received an email from Ashley McCollum. And It was a link to buried documents on the EPA website that they never talked about publicly or transparently, but it's there. And that's, that tells the story. So we're gonna go through a timeline. So February 3rd, first event, which you've seen. February 6th, second event. February 17th, it turns out Norfolk Southern, along with the full knowledge of the EPA, was testing for dioxins near ground zero, with detailed testing reports that showed high levels of dioxin TEQ samples, 91.9. And that's key for the other chemicals in the fingerprints too. February 17th, I receive a direct Twitter X message from Courtney Miller, can you come out here and help us test? I came out what I thought would be 2 trips. February 22nd, I arrive in East Palestine for the first time and I begin testing in and around Sulphur Run. February 22nd, and these are active links for those that want the presentation, a contractor comes out of the woods when I'm testing Sulphur Run. And you're just gonna see a video. You saw part of it in the documentary, you'll see another video of it. So I think I now know why, because they were testing on February 17th and all of a sudden they see this guy in Sulphur Run in waders and pulling water and sediment samples. This is from FOIA documents either received by Leslie Pacey or with what was in that link that we got from Ashley. And this is February 14th. EPA supervisor writes, he acknowledged, meaning Norfolk Southern, they would need to address the remaining contamination in their remediation plan in the future. So it's just tells a story. That's the source email. Now, everyone says the EPA gives directives to Norfolk Southern. Well, here you have Jackie Cole of Region 5 and Robert Wood of Norfolk Southern. So Norfolk Southern instructs the EPA and other agencies to coordinate with Norfolk Southern and not the Norfolk Southern contractors. Now, I think we've all heard a far different narrative from the EPA in the media. And this is interesting because the EPA is looking for containment locations that we will be following up in more detail with the Government Accountability Project. Now, there is a dioxin expert at the EPA, Brian Gullett. He's never allowed to talk to the media. This comes from an internal EPA email from FOIA. There may be residual dioxin in the ash residues, but I suspect most of what may have been formed was dispersed throughout the area in the plume. We have the ability to sample these plumes using our drone-mounted sampler, but it's too late now, of course. Now, here's where we're going to get into it. Just think about, in my offer, I will go on record again today. I will sit down with Mark Durno, Norfolk Southern, for the benefit of the community. No hard feelings. I can take all the smears and defamation as long as there is a positive outcome for this East Palestine community. So Brian Gullett, the dioxin expert, said even if it rained, it'd be extremely unlikely that they'd be in the soil 6 inches deep. Why is this important? You'll see this. April 20th last year, you see Mark Durno stand up and all these samples getting averaged. So on March 10th, I received the first testing results from Eurofins, confirming elevated levels of dioxins and sulfur run sediment and presence in the water. March 10th, what we know now, we didn't know until January 25th of 2024, the EPA received the testing results back from their dioxin testing. So March 17th, I'm interviewed by Will Kane on the Fox News channel. That's why it's important for this timeline, especially with any media in the room and the media not in the room that is listening to these smears and these false narratives from Norfolk Southern and EPA. March 20th, EPA's Barbara McCree, we still don't even know if she's a real person, Multimedia Communications at EPA, wrote an email looking for my personal information. Here it is. There's the email, Barbara McCree.
Wow.
And I was told like 3 public information officers were watching, but here's 52 people at the EPA watching every move I make now. If I don't know what I'm doing or anything, I don't know what they're so concerned with. But they're reporting in my locations, whereabouts. March 20th, Mark Durno at the EPA in an internal email appears to begin the nothing to see here narrative. That's after the Fox News thing. That's after they have the results with the 91.9 composite sample TEQ. And the expert team around me, we've been talking about a potential third event, which is the remediation of most of the toxic burn pits after the EPA appears to stop all dioxin testing. We've got test results that suggest that dioxins and other chemicals may have continued to spread with the excavation of the burn pits. Now, May 2nd is the first News Nation story with Rich McHugh. I want to say, I hope ABC, NBC, and Time Magazine are listening, because Rich McHugh, News Nation, and Chris Cuomo are setting the standard. Whatever's going on at these other networks, the other networks aren't really telling the truth. And Rich McHugh, News Nation, Chris Cuomo, and that whole network, I forget everyone else, I don't want to be, are absolutely telling the truth. They're fair, they're representing both sides. So this community owes a big round of thanks for News Nation, again, or I may not be here, along with many other people trying to help. See, here's the Mark Durno email. Here's the dioxin reference for background soils. We'll forget about it, but would love. Oh, it's the Office of Research and Development. So I think my lawyers tell me there are no coincidences. That's why this timeline is very important. The question is, will any media really cover the timeline, beyond News Nation? July 24th through 27th, Marilyn Figley informed, on July 27th, I wrote an email. So Marilyn Figley, who you may have seen on the news, we did the garlic crop testing, which we'll talk about next, tried to set up a meeting. I went to one meeting with Norfolk where we're going to sit down and agree with our detailed test reports, methods, everything, in reciprocity. The railroad, Norfolk Southern, and the EPA said, no, we only want to see Scott Smith's details. We're not sharing any details. And I put this in writing. Please understand this is a response to this entire email chain. I remain willing to have an open dialogue and collaboration with Norfolk Southern and or the EPA and or any Norfolk Southern contractors and or anyone involved in the Unified Command Center, but it will be on equal terms with information shared in both directions. And that July 27th email is public. I think it's on the Government Accountability Project website. That's available for all to see. Again, Mark Durno has lied about this. September 25th, Chris Cuomo, News Nation, hosted a town hall with residents. October 4th, EPA concludes no further dioxin tested needing in East Palestine. October 19th, in my driveway, I get served with a lengthy subpoena asking me for all my communications with residents, all my testing, all my communications with media, everything else. Total violation of my constitutional rights. Thank God for Government Accountability Project and my personal attorney. We stood up to them. I said, bring it on, file a motion to compel. They still haven't done that. But this timeline, I would love to get cameras in the courtroom and face this. And I may not have enough time to get into it, but plaintiffs' attorneys, Jake Koza and my personal attorney, without talking to each other, said, this is strange. These plaintiffs' attorneys in the class action might be trying to get results. And I'm going to be very clear. I'm not in the business of enriching these class action attorneys. They can reimburse me for my costs. I'm not making money like all these other consultants, and I will put that money back into the community to do more testing. And then on November 25th, the roll of the dice comes out from Huffington Post in Christy Angelo, and then that leads to a bunch of censorship, which you see on the Government Accountability website. So now the EPA, the latest narrative with the EPA as this gets out from the press release from Government Accountability Project, is that was on-site testing on February 17th and February 9th. And, you know, we were only talking about off-site. Well, that is a comedy show because on-site everything is connected. Taggart Street, where Brushville Hardware supply, East Martin, that's all on-site because the plume fallout deposited everywhere. So off-site, in our definition, is where the toxic plume fallout was not. And we went with the experts on my team. There's a little sliver just outside, not far from East Palestine, on Beaver Circle in Columbiana. And the dioxin background there was 1.7 parts per trillion TEQ. Now, these are the FOIA documents from Norfolk Southern. I'm going to go fast through these, but same reports, same lab I use. And that is the chain of custody. They started on February 9th. And they tested water here. So they found vinyl chloride at 290 parts per billion in the water. This community is very smart. You can Google this and look at that. But these are like baseline fingerprint contamination settings. So I want to show you this. So these are the dioxin testing from February 17th. Now, think about on ABC and all the smears coming at me from Mark Durno. Composite testing. The best analogy to this, so composite, they have all these samples of dioxin soil, of testing for dioxin in soil, but they instructed the lab to blend 5 samples together and take a reading. They didn't put out the TEQ. The TEQ was 91.9. So what I did is I brought, so this is equivalent, let's say, you know, I get pulled over on a suspected DUI. This is my blood. And picture this, if you're Norfolk Southern, the police officer would say, oh, I'm sorry, you can do your own blood testing. So I call up 4 of my friends that haven't had any drinking, and I take all this stuff and I pour it together and I mix it up. That's a composite sample. And Mark Durna and the EPA, they want to question my methods. I'm going to give a direct challenge to Alex Prescia of ABC. Why don't you cover this? Time Magazine will get to them. Why don't you cover this? So the dioxin TEQ is 91.9, and this is the fingerprint, you know, what we call the fingerprint that I've learned from my scientific team. And I'm just going to go, so here's the chain of custody from February 21st, benzene, 55 parts per million, which is 55,000 parts per billion. Vinyl chloride. So this lays everything out. And I am not aware of this ever being talked about or addressed by Mark Durna. And don't buy the on-site, off-site stuff, because the whole town is on-site. Anywhere that plume deposited is on-site. The only thing off-site are the control samples, where the plume was not. So this is behind Courtney Miller's house. This is on February 22nd. Well, little did I know. Now I know. And, oh, by the way, Norfolk Southern and the EPA have accused me of making up this video. And again, Mark Durno, EPA, Norfolk Southern. I'll make the video available. It's not. I didn't have an actress do this. That's how desperate they are.
You're on private property here.
I'm sorry. I'm just asking you if you're taking samples.
I'm not, just like you refer me to your public information officer, have you taken samples?
I can't answer any of your questions.
You can't. Well, then why should I answer any of your questions?
Because
Because
this is not a site.
of what?
We need to know who's coming and going on the site.
But this is private property.
We're working down here.
You're standing on private property right now.
I'm sorry, but I need to know.
I have to check with my public information officer.
Okay.
You're on private property.
I'm sorry.
The landowner doesn't want you trespassing.
So now, it took to January 24th, 2024, thanks to Ashley McCall. I know why they came out of the woods like that. It was really weird because they already knew that they were testing for dioxins. It's right there on the timeline. And then in May, we tested, and this is after, so in February 22nd, the TEQ was 18 in the sediment of the creek. In May 23rd, it increased to 65. This is why me and the scientific team said, Scott, this third event, the remediation, is going up. And we still have a lot more testing results coming in, to come in. So, and this is the same version in a bar graph. So it's significantly increased after the remediation, but the EPA stopped all dioxin testing on April 18th, and remediation cranked up after April 18th. And these are just pellets. The vinyl PVC pellets in soil for VOCs, they tested all of it. And it's all butyl benzene phthalate, butyl acrylate. So you can see this narrative again. These are all, once they knew what they had, it's the chemicals in your home. You're to blame, residents, for your health symptoms. And, benzene, butyl acrylate, 60 parts per million. Benzene is a very concerning chemical, and I hear scientists all the time say there is no safe level of benzene. This goes on and on and on, so I'm just going to scroll through this, but you can see it's over and over again, and these are all the lab tests that were buried on the EPA website. Now here is a video from Mark Durno this is from April 20th.
The modeling also told us that we would not expect to see a high concentration of dioxin compounds, which is the compound that most people have indicated to us that they're concerned about. The primary contaminant that we're looking for are semi-volatile organics, which are common products we would see from a burn. Dioxins, we wouldn't expect to see that, but there was enough interest in that particular chemical that we added that to our soil sampling list. Then there's the dioxins. Again, we sampled for dioxins because you told your elected officials we want this compound tested for. So we added it to our analyte list. Now, as far as the railroad goes, the lab they're using is called Eurofins. They're a very highly reputable lab in the U.S., so I'm not concerned about their choice of laboratories. We're also using a reputable lab. I think we're using PACE, right? Labs out of Pittsburgh and Minneapolis. So yeah, the laboratory quality is high. So again, you can't have enough data to make decisions with. Sir.
Yeah, this area here, a lot of people grow gardens and things like that. What's your recommendation for doing so this year?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because that was actually part of my talking points. I never said anything. Our recommendation is to continue using your properties the way you normally would. We actually just had a meeting with the garden club, one of the garden clubs in the area, Tuesday night, and we had an expert come in, a phytoremediation expert. Phytoremediation is using plants to clean up, chemicals. He told us that the chemicals that we're dealing with, if they were a problem, do not readily uptake into those plants. So even if we had a problem, he doesn't believe that you should not garden or farm. Okay, that was his piece of advice. Our recommendation to date, because of the analysis that we did the modeling and analysis that we did and how we understand the chemistry of the vinyl chloride burn, we don't believe that there was enough dioxin concentration in that smoke to create a problem, okay? The back calculation we did, and it gets to another question one of you guys asked about the modeling. We back calculate, I think you asked it. We did the modeling for the one car the night before the vent and burn. We did an event reconstruction model several weeks later to look back at what the 5-car burn did, plus the observations from our guys on the ground, you know, plus the wind patterns that we looked at from various sources.
So, did you hear Mark Durno say you can never have enough data? And I've offered to meet with him. Did you hear that, Time Magazine? Did you hear that, Alex Pressure at ABC? Did you hear that at CBS, Roxanne Silveria and Natalie Needs? Did you hear that? You might want to cover that. And then here's an example of my reports, the same Eurofins. So he talks about Eurofins, but did you hear Mark Durno? This is an agency that has $12 billion and 17,000 employees, and they're relying on models, and they knew about testing from February 9th and February 17th. Think about that. Think about that. Now, Time Magazine, Time Magazine, the residents' quotes were great in the community, but here is an example of the undue influence and the media just blindly putting the EPA on a pedestal. So there's a picture, and actually that's not even a lab report, that's an EPA spreadsheet table. If there was a picture of me doing that, I'd be crucified. And this is right out of the Time Magazine article that came out on February 2nd. Durno's working 16 to 18-hour days to hear this. And I'm gonna officially say, because I tell it like it is, shame on Time Magazine for mistrust of the government in this largely conservative community. Shame on them. This is not about politics. That's implying that. So Time Magazine needs to be called out. And this is a video that's 3 minutes long, but this was the Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry, where me and the scientific team gave a presentation. They didn't know we were there, but they talk about misinformation and disinformation.
So we're going to talk today. This presentation is, we're going to cover some misinformation and disinformation sort of basics on why in emergencies misinformation tends to spread and how. And then I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Diane Russell, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the work that EPA did in East Palestine in an attempt to build a more trusted risk communication space that was sort of outside some of the misinformation and disinformation that was happening. With that, I want to turn things over to Diane Russell, who is going to talk, with that in mind, about some of the work that we've done in East Palestine.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Diane Russell, and I work for the Environmental Protection Agency as a community involvement coordinator. So folks that do my job are, in essence, the folks that go on the front lines in these kinds of scenarios and situations. And we take the tools that we know in our toolbox as far as engagement and what we know works and have applied in a number of communities that have.
I have one question and maybe a follow-on. You mentioned you reached out to the community gardening groups with the fight of remediation and so forth. And I'm sure one of the questions was, can we eat our garden produce? What did you say to them?
Sorry, repeat that. Can you get your garden what?
So in East Palestine, you reached out to and had sessions with the community garden groups, I guess. In that session, I'm certain they would ask you, can I eat my garden produce grown in East Palestine at the homes?
Yeah, so there was a large initial concern about that. And people even were wondering if they could, because their pools were, do I swim in my pool? Do I have to clean my pool? So that was one of the drivers to we understood people were worried about that soot that was deposited, and that's why we went out and did a pretty expansive soil sampling that was conducted in the area, just to show and provide evidence that, you know, there isn't really anything we're finding above background here. Please proceed to, you know, operate as normal. And if you have questions or concerns, connecting them with their local extension. Ohio State Extension has been a fantastic partner in working and helping people who had concerns like that kind of navigate that as well.
I follow on Ohio State work that was done in the field. It was done with early wheat and barley and so forth, many miles distance from the heart of East Palestine. My question is the garden produce that the community themselves have been eating all summer and this fall. Did the US EPA do any empirical sampling of the produce to tell them it was safe to eat?
That was something that the states were, they were looking at, like livestock, and there were, so the efforts for sampling was kind of at the state level.
I understand, but did the US EPA sample any produce that the people have been eating in East Palestine?
No, we sampled soil again. That if there was a line of evidence that showed that we needed to put out any advisories, we did not find any evidence of that.
I understand the US EPA does not sample on private residences' property. Is that correct?
We have to get access agreements to do that.
I understand. Thank you.
And at the end, they're asked a question about crop testing. And we relied on our partners. They never tested any crops in East Palestine. They relied on models. And Leslie, this plant expert that the EPA references, we need to find out everything about him. We need to FOIA, what is he paid, and the one that showed up at the community meeting. So Mark Darno says you can't do enough testing, but we're going to do our models. It's okay to eat your crop and you know, eat your garden produce. So here it is. We just released this last week, and Kelly Kennedy also has done a great job with local media from out of Cleveland. So Marilyn Figley's TEQ dioxin in garlic is 440. The control sample, which came from Tamerlyn Freeze from a year ago, was 0.81, and her garlic from her garden was 4.5, which is 54,000%. Now, we need more testing, but this is preliminary data. More testing needs to be done. This is better than nothing, and I would like to do a lot more crop testing. And Marilyn Figley's lawyer from the class action refused to turn over results. I get my results to residents as fast as I can. So these plaintiff class action attorneys not giving over results, that I don't know what's up with that. I mean, there are theories out there that they're gonna jam down a settlement. All I can say recently, one of my businesses was in a class action. It resolved to a data breach. The lawyers got $5 million in legal fees. Guess what I got? I just got my check for $750.
Oh my God.
And, well, I'm almost done now. The 63 East Palestine dioxin soil samples so far. So we look at greater than 3 parts per trillion TEQ, 70%, the regional screening level, sometimes residential screening level, is 4.8 ppt. You hear Mark Dern talk about that. So 46% are over that. Now think about this logic. My methods, my quality, 54%, the majority of my samples are good news, nothing to see here in the soil. And we've identified some hot zones. So if I'm using dirty shovels and trying to manipulate all this data, it just doesn't make sense. And I got news. I was with the O'Connells last week. The EPA, what did the EPA tell you, Lori? But they also said they wouldn't test your soil because it's close to a roadway? Yeah, right to the roadway. The soil I tested with 3 parts per trillion, it was under the screening level. That's good news. So, I'm actually, in a weird, ironic way, I'm almost limiting the liability of the railroad, but I'm identifying the hot zones. So they're trying to smear me. They're in a weird, ironic way. They're kind of attacking data they don't want to attack. And then the control sample from Beaver Circle, Columbiana, the TEQ was 1.7. And these are our latest February 1st results. So again, the Norfolk Acatus 91.9. Just remember this composite sampling. This is blended mixture. So more likely than not, there were much higher dioxin results. So there you see a summary of our various results with initials. So the regional screening level, you see, from 379% more to Brushville Hardware Supply at 39,000. So more testing is needed. And this going back to the control samples in Bull Creek where the plume was not for water, baseline dioxin testing, and then we had sulfur run. And we have a few more slides here. When it gets to furnace filters, particle sizes, the human eye can only see, I think it's something like 40 microns. And these you're talking about as low as 2.5. And why this is important, Christy Angelo from Huffington Post originally exposed some of this, but Brian Gullett is a key scientist at the EPA. Why can't anyone talk to him? But this is from a paper he has characterizing emissions and burning plastics. The particulates emitted were 2.5 microns or less. Respiral nature of the dioxins, it shows what you can breathe in. And this is very important here because these MER filters, you never get a perfect seal. So what I am testing in furnace filters, it's better than nothing. It's what you're not feeling well, you may have been exposed to. The residue I'm identifying is probably 10 to 50, most 80 to 90% flowed right through. Now, this is my last slide, but I also want to say, whoever the resident was that was on Fox Business News with Maria Bartiromo, I apparently used my name. I got a phone call from Lisa and Stephen Hilbert out of Indianapolis, and they immediately called up and paid about $8,000 of lab testing. So get more. So if you're on Facebook, you see Lisa Hilbert, please reach out to her and thank them. Again, you got. I don't know where all these other tax-exempt organizations, nonprofits are. Government Accountability Project is putting money into this, and I want to say, I want to give a chance. Every passing minute is a chance to turn it all around. Norfolk Southern, no, I'm not. I got thick skin. Mark Durno, let's still sit down on behalf of the community. I'm going to give you the chance to turn it all around. And Pastor Joe Sheely, I ask you tomorrow, don't pray for me. Pray for the whistleblowers that I know want to come out. Pray for Mark Durno. Pray for Norfolk Southern, and pray that they can find it in their hearts to do the right thing and sit down and have a full exchange of data. And with that being said, people know I don't always follow the exact rules. So Rick Chai originally called me. I didn't know he was the railroad, sat down and interviewed me. And I'm going to end with this. East Palestine represents everything that's great about the country and everything that needs to be fixed. And all these great people, I thank you because you motivated me. You gave me hope that this country can be fixed. And I want to say, Rick Chai, I don't get into politics or political endorsements. I am fully endorsing Rick Chai. I'm endorsing his character to change. I don't care what he runs on or what. And his story is the American dream with his father and how he came over here. I really can't thank Rick Chai enough for being able to work with him, and it's an honor to know him. And I brought him a little gift because I want to make, after he's elected, the congressman in the blue shirt